Is it a big change from touring with the big band, the Richard Thompson big band? Artistically, is it more satisfying or just different?
It's just different. I think if you're playing solo and acoustic, you've got more limitations in terms of what you can do instrumentally. You know, and I probably have to vet material that's playable in that context. You know, you can't do some kinds of rock and roll songs. You know, I mean, you can actually you can play rock and roll with an acoustic guitar. It's true, folks.
Yeah.
It's true. I think you can also put across a lyric much better acoustically, and sometimes you can create, I think, more empathy with an audience, and you'd certainly be more aware of empathy with an audience if you're playing acoustic. If you're playing electric, you do tend to steamroller over an audience, which is good if they don't like you, and it can be good if they do like you. Yeah, you know, rock and roll is, you know, it's basically very sort of unsociable, hooliganistic music, and you know, you just turn up loud and do it. You know, that's what that's all about, isn't it?
Yes.
Can you just tell us a little bit about your working relationship with people like Simon Nicol and Dave Maddox and Dave Peake, people you've had connections with, you know, through Fairport for the last nearly 20 years?
My goodness, 20 years. Well, as we watch the hairlines recede, the musicians that you mentioned, you know, been working on and off with, you know, for that long, and there's definitely an understanding, a musical understanding that's created, which makes it very easy to play together with little or no rehearsal. You know, you have an instant rapport, and you have some idea of what everyone else is going to do. And these are people that I always enjoy playing with.
Played with them on lots of albums too.
On lots of records as well, yeah. I think they're some of the best recording musicians that you can get. They did the last album that I did, or two of them anyway. And I'll be playing with them again this summer at the Fairport Reunion, which is this annual general meeting and dinner and dance that happens, you know, in August every year.
You obviously get a lot of inspiration from them, and they also from you, because you continue working together on and off over the years. And they also do your songs quite often.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, I think so. It's funny because, I suppose, to be honest, we play in a very, we do play in a fairly unpopular section of music, you know, so-called folk rock, British style. Never became quite the household name that we had anticipated back in the 60s. So there aren't that many people who really play that style, and it is a style, and it has its own subtleties and nuances, you know, in the same way that it's hard for somebody coming from, you know, let's pick on New Zealand. It's hard for someone coming from New Zealand to play New Orleans music. You know, it's hard for someone not coming from Britain to play, you know, or not having, you know, English, Irish or Scottish roots to play that music, because it has its own kind of swing. You know, a lot of people fall down when they try and play that stuff. So, you know, there's only so many exponents of that music. There's only so many drummers and bass players and stuff. So I think over the years we have tended to play with each other. And it's fun playing with each other, if you'll excuse the expression.
What do you think of bands like REM and 10,000 Maniacs and Let's Active and the new Fairport lineup?
Well, okay, big question. REM, yes, like them. 10,000 Maniacs, yes. Let's Active, yes. I think all those bands are very good, very interesting.
Do you consider that they're folk rock bands? Do you?
I suppose so. I think it's not really productive to labour over the, you know, over that term. You know, pigeonholes have always ultimately been pretty destructive in music. So, you know, let's say, yeah, that they do play, you know, rock music with a definite folk or traditional or, you know, acoustic overtone or something. Interesting bands. Moving on to the Fairport lineup, I think it's really interesting. When I saw them in London, I didn't feel that it quite settled down. I think it's a real lease of life for the band. Everyone seemed very energized by having a change in personnel, which I think was very good. I think the last album was extremely good. Definitely the best Fairport album since, since the 30s.
I've always been a great fan of the writing of Sandy Denny, and also I've always liked your songwriting. I see a kind of relationship there. Did you feel that you cross-fertilised each other in creative terms, working together?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I used to know Sandy really well and been in the same band, and probably sharing the same musical direction. I think we would have listened to the same music and probably shared a lot of the same ideas anyway. It probably wouldn't go any closer than that, I don't think. I think there comes a point where Sandy was a very different songwriter, a very unique songwriter. I can't think of anyone actually quite like her. She was influenced by Joni Mitchell, as many people, but it was a slight influence because she wasn't original. I think she could stomp all over Joni Mitchell myself. She was also very influenced by traditional music, as were we all.
I think that's what provides the sort of otherworldliness in her writing. Kind of goes beyond this sphere into another one.
Yeah, I think so.
That's something I've also found in your writing, that it's otherworldly.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know, but I can see that in the body of traditional music that you get in Britain, a good percentage of it deals with the supernatural. There's a lot of supernatural ballads. You get supernatural, you get murder ballads, and you get industrial ballads and stuff. It's one of the main categories.
What was it like working with Sandy Denny?
What was it like? On the whole, great, because it's not often that you get the privilege of working with someone that good. I think Sandy was, the best, British singer since who knows when. Dusty Springfield was also, I think, a tremendous singer, but Sandy, I think, was more original as a singer.
And she was more of an all-round musician and being a writer as well. She's incredibly talented.
Absolutely. It's not often that, in your lifetime that you do get to work with people like that. So it was a great privilege, and Sandy was a volatile person. When she was great, she was absolutely great, and when she was being mean, she was absolutely dreadful.
Yeah, Jerry Conway told me about one time she threw him across the room.
Yeah, and Jerry's no slip of a lad,
Richard, we've heard something of your approach to recording over here. Tell us how you put an album together, how you put your tracks together. The one-shot minimum overdub.
Well, we kind of sling it together. Having tried a few different ways of doing it, I seem to be better at trying to record as quickly as possible and as live as possible, which isn't, what everyone likes to do. The Beach Boys, excel at a whole different style of doing it, where you take a long time and you overdub endlessly and take weeks, and years. I tend to make records very quickly. I just finished a record that I think we did 12 tracks in 5 days, which is good going these days, and that was fairly. It was pretty much a finished product.
Is there a artistic reason for that? A statement.
Oh yeah,
by you?
Yeah. I should say. I think if you record that quickly, then you do capture spontaneity. Sometimes it's better if the other musicians are not very familiar with the song even, so that people are discovering it as they go along. then what happens is you create an arena for things to happen in the studio, for things to happen spontaneously. That if you have the arrangements down pat, you lose that sometimes. On the record I just did, I think everything that we kept was take 1 or take 2, and we didn't record past take 4 on anything, you know. But everything that we got was the early stuff, you know. And sometimes it's really sloppy, but it sounds better for being sloppy, you know. It's got spark to it. I think if you miss that point, sometimes you have to record for a long time to get back. You have to kind of break yourself again, you know. You have to get to the point where you're so sick of it that you stop thinking and you just don't care anymore, you know, which is about take 65. And then
does that apply to vocals too? Do you put everything down live, or do you?
Yeah, I go for vocals. Some get kept, and some, you know, have to be done again. I think the human voice is a wavery instrument, and especially if you're singing live, pitch is usually fairly crucial. I think in terms of phrasing and everything, a live vocal is always the best one. But sometimes it's hard to pitch it if you're singing over a band, you know, live in the studio. There's all kinds of factors, headphones and this and that and the other. So some vocals have to be redone.
That was the approach of the early Fairport band though too, wasn't it, to get a live thing down in the studio? Yeah,
I think that's always what we tried to do. What we did in our holidays, which is our second album, we were finding out about studio craft and about what you could do in a studio. And you know, there's a fair bit of, you know, double speed guitar and you know, half speed cymbals and all that kind of stuff. Just you know, for finding out the possibilities, flexing our muscles, as it were. But on the whole, we did most stuff live. You know, and Half Bricking is just about nearly all live, totally live vocals, everything. You know.
Fairport were influenced a great deal by the Byrds, and you've cited McGuinn and White as major influences. You actually had the opportunity to play with Roger McGuinn at McCabe's once a couple of years ago, apparently. Can you tell us about that?
Well, that was fun. Yeah, I hadn't met Roger McGuinn before, and you know, knees quaking. Big thrill for me. He was a mutual friend of T-Bone Burnett. I knew T-Bone, and he'd done the Rolling Thunder tour with McGuinn and Dylan. I can't remember whose show. I suppose it was McGuinn's show, and he asked us up to do, you know, a couple of songs. I know we did Rock and Roll Star, which was fun. It was all acoustic, yeah. Roger was playing 12-string acoustic.
That was an old song from the Fairport days, the early Fairport days.
Very early Fairport days, yeah. So 65, I think, 66, yeah.
You never got to meet Clarence White?
Yes, I did meet Clarence White. When Fairport toured the States in, must have been 1970, I met Clarence briefly. And one of the regrets of my life was that he invited me up to his house for the afternoon, and I couldn't go because I had an interview with somebody. But I seriously regretted that. But you never know when people are going to disappear. You know?
Well, since we're throwing in a few extra questions, could you just talk a little bit about, you know, what you thought about the Byrds?
About the Byrds, yeah. The Byrds were an interesting band because they were one of the first bands to play amplified folk music. Let's say, generally speaking, folk music. I think they were the first band to do really interesting, great versions of traditional songs. Wild Mountain Thyme, they did a great version. You know, they just had a great sound. They're very kind of drony 12-string guitar sound. Which I think many of us fell in love with. For us in Fairport, it pointed a direction, you know, especially under the aegis of Mr. Hutchings. You know, we saw it very much as something that would resolve our conflict as being English musicians. Did we want to spend our lives imitating, you know, the Byrds or Muddy Waters or, you know, Merle Haggard or the Guess Who or the Electric Prunes or something? You know what I mean? It was an opportunity to play indigenous music in a contemporary context. So that's the way that we went.
I wanted to ask you about your songwriting, how you work. Do you write, are you disciplined about it? Do you write every day, or is it something that you do as it hits you?
It's probably somewhere between the two. I certainly don't write every day. I probably write in bursts. Ideally, I take a month or a couple of weeks as a time period, and just write every day in that period. I probably write best to order. I write best, for a tour, to get new material for a tour or for a record, and I write best to deadlines. If I have to start a record, is the best thing.
So it's all there. It's just a matter of having a reason for it to come out.
I think what happens is that stuff gets collected all the time. I make a lot of notes all the time. Every day I make notes, and I collect musical ideas, which can be just about anything, musically or lyrically, to do with songs. And I think then, as time approaches to start getting stuff out, then all that starts to come together, and you start a kind of an editing process, and songs get written somehow.
What percentage do you throw away out of the ones you write? Do you ever throw them away? And how many times a week does Dave Pegg come round to Radio Dustbin?
Unfair question. Probably what gets discarded is about 50%, I think, of nearly finished or finished material, and there's a reason it gets thrown away.
So that's not just you don't want to use it, but you don't want anyone else to use it either. That's there are some songs that I think probably okay that sit around, and sometimes other people pick them up, which is nice.
Like how many times?
Yeah, which is an old one that's been sitting around for years. There's all kinds of stuff like that. They're often tracks that get left off albums. You might record 13, 14 tracks for a record, and you use 10 or something. So you have these other ones that were almost good enough, but not quite. Or sometimes you get songs that don't fit the context of a record, which is also important.
Richard, there seems to be a resurgence of interest in the folk rock movement as such. It's been noted in articles by Colin Irwin and the like in England. How do you see the future of folk rock and general rock and roll music in the 80s?
Oh, rest of the 80s. Horrible. Well, probably more of the same for the 80s. I think the state of folk or folk rock or in Britain, I can talk about Britain anyway, is fairly healthy at the moment. You've got young bands bringing in a young audience and introducing them to traditional forms of music. A band like the Pogues, who are basically a lousy band, dreadful band, but they have virtues,
And Billy Bragg.
Billy Bragg, who's now almost spans popular punk and folk musics. He's been accepted by the folk community, does folk festivals, and loves it.
I believe he's playing with the Watersons, in fact.
I think that's an April Fool's joke, actually. Yes. I was foolish enough to ask about that, and that was an April Fool's joke. But he knows all the songs.
You see a resurgence of acoustic music rather than amplified music?
Yeah, I think at some point soon there has to be some rebellion against the rather unsatisfying texture of electronic music. Because it's a little bland at the moment. If you hear a few electronic records, it's really exciting. If you hear it all day as a diet, it just lacks texture. It doesn't have enough texture, and I think the texture of acoustic music is going to become very appealing. I can see acoustic music coming back in a different way. Not acoustic guitars. something different. I've always thought there's tremendous scope in medieval music or something, some of those old instruments, different sounds and tonalities. But I think there will be a swing to acoustic music somehow. But I can't quite envisage it. If I could, I'd be Malcolm McLaren.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks very much for
Thank you.
answering the questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.